Hey guys, tonight we are drifting back into a golden, unhurried kind of afternoon. The kind that smelled like fresh-cut grass and warm asphalt, and the faint sweetness of bubble gum tucked into your cheek. We're travelling back to the 1970s, into the ordinary, wonderful, everyday life of an American teenager. Back when the whole world seemed to move at the speed of a bicycle coasting downhill, and the biggest decision of your day was which song you hoped the radio might play next. And before we settle in, I want to say a genuine thank you to the kind soul who suggested tonight's journey. You sent me the sweetest ideas, and honestly, this channel would not be what it is without the gentle nudges you leave in the comments. So if you ever have a moment or a memory you would like me to wander into next, please share it. I read them all, and they shape everything we do here. If you feel like it, a quiet like or a subscribe helps more people find this little corner of calm, but no pressure at all. And if you ever want to drift off to these stories somewhere else, the channel is now living quietly over on Spotify too, with the link waiting for you down in the description. Now go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights until the room glows soft and low. Switch on a fan for that gentle hush of white noise. Pull the blanket up, fluff the pillow, and let your shoulders finally come down from your ears. Because I want you to wonder, just for a little while, what a Tuesday afternoon actually felt like in 1974. What did the record store smell like when you first walked in from the heat? What was it like to hear your favourite song come crackling out of a transistor radio back when you could not summon it whenever you wished, but only wait and hope and be delighted when it finally arrived? What did the school hallway sound like at 3 o'clock when the last bell rang and everyone spilled out into the sunshine at once? And just like that, it is 1974. The screen door is swinging shut behind you. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower is humming its slow, contented tune. A bicycle bell rings once, faint and far away, and the whole long afternoon is just beginning. Let us start with the morning. The clock radio on your nightstand clicks over, and before your eyes are even open, a song is already pouring softly into the room. Something with a warm guitar and a chorus you half know. The light through your curtains is thin and buttery, the kind of early gold that means summer is not far off. You lie there for a moment in the tangle of your sheets, listening to the disc jockey murmur about traffic and weather in that smooth, easy voice they all seemed to have back then. The house is quiet except for the distant clatter of dishes downstairs and the low rumble of the water heater. There is no glowing screen to reach for, no notifications waiting, just the radio, the morning, and the soft, unhurried business of waking up. You do not spring up right away. Nobody did. Not really. You let the song finish first, because that was the deal you made with yourself, one more minute, just until the chorus comes back around. The disc jockey talks over the fade out the way they always do, sliding right into a commercial for a car dealership out on the highway. His voice bright and tireless even at this early hour. You reach out one arm and turn the little dial to nudge the volume up, and the plastic knob is cool and familiar under your thumb, worn smooth from 1,000 mornings just like this one. The room slowly comes into focus around you. There is the poster on the wall, curling a little at one corner where the tape has given up. There is the pile of clothes on the chair you meant to put away. Your bike is leaning somewhere down in the garage, waiting. On the ceiling, the light moves in slow ripples thrown up from a puddle or a car windshield out on the street, and you watch it drift for a while without any particular thought in your head. This is the last stillness you will get all day, and some quiet part of you seems to know it, and holds on. From downstairs comes the small orchestra of the house getting itself going. The percolator is muttering to itself on the stove. A cabinet door bumps shut. Your mother says something to your father in a low voice, and he answers with just a grunt, the way he does before his coffee. A spoon rings against a cup. The screen door out back squeaks open and slaps closed as somebody lets the dog out into the yard. You cannot hear the words, only the shapes of them, and there is a comfort in that. in knowing the day is being assembled below you by people who love you, whether you get up to help or not. The song ends, and another begins, and you finally sit up and let the sheets fall away. The floor is cool under your bare feet. You stretch your arms up until your shoulders pop, and you yawn wide enough to crack your jaw, and you sit there on the edge of the bed for a second, just being a person in the morning, unhurried and unwatched. There is no rectangle of glass demanding your eyes before your feet even hit the floor. There is no scroll to fall into, no feed already humming with the world's opinions before you have even had a chance to have your own. There is only the radio still playing, and the light still climbing, and the whole unwritten day standing patiently in front of you. It is a small thing, waking up this way, but it is the kind of small thing you do not fully appreciate until it is gone. Mornings then belong to you first, before they belong to anyone else. Nobody could reach you here. The world had to wait until you walked out the door to get its hands on you, and even then it moved slowly enough that you could keep up. You woke into your own head, into your own room, into the sound of your own family moving through the ordinary machinery of a Tuesday, and for those first few minutes the day was still soft and unspent and entirely wonderfully yours. You listen to one more verse. The gold light has climbed a little higher on the wall now, warming the whole room, and you can smell coffee and toast starting to drift up the stairs. Somewhere out in the neighbourhood a car door slams, an engine turns over. A dog answers another dog 3 yards away. The radio disc jockey laughs at his own joke and reads the time, and you realise with a small jolt that you really do have to move now. But you carry the morning with you as you rise. You will carry it all day, whether you notice or not. That easy song, and that buttery light, and that feeling of waking gently into a world that was in no rush to claim you. It is the kind of quiet that is harder to find now, when the day begins the instant our eyes open, and never quite lets us go. Back then, the morning gave you a running start, and on a Tuesday in 1974, with a song on the radio and the whole house waking up around you, that running start felt like the most natural thing in the world. Now you shuffle to the bathroom, and the day's small transformation begins. There is the hiss of the aerosol can, the cloud of hairspray that hangs in the air and catches the light. You work at your hair with a comb and a blow dryer, chasing that feathered look everyone wanted, the kind that swept back from your face like wings. Maybe there is a dab of Love's Baby Soft, or a splash of something your older brother left behind that smells like leather and green apples. Your clothes are laid across the chair, denim worn soft and pale at the knees, a shirt with a collar wide enough to catch a breeze. Everything about the ritual is slow and physical and yours. It is the kind of quiet, private preparing that is harder to find now. The mirror is fogged a little at the edges from someone's earlier shower, and you wipe a clean circle in it with the side of your hand. Your own face looks back at you, half asleep still, and you get to work. The blow dryer roars in your ears, hot against your scalp, and you lean into it, tilting your head this way and that, guiding the hair back with the round brush the way you've practiced. It never comes out exactly the way it does on the album covers or in the magazine pages, but you get it close enough, and there is a real satisfaction in that final pass of the comb, the little flick at the ends that sets the whole thing in place. The bathroom is a small, warm world of its own at this hour. The tile is cool underfoot, but the air is thick and humid and smells of soap and steam and that sweet chemical bite of the hairspray still settling. There is a water ring on the counter, a cap left off the toothpaste, a razor balanced on the edge of the sink. Everything is a little cluttered and a little damp and completely lived in. You can hear someone rattling the doorknob, wanting their turn, and you call out that you will just be a minute, which is a small and cheerful lie everyone in the house understands. You reach for the little bottle of cologne or perfume and press it once, twice, into the air. Then walk into the mist the way the older kids taught you. The scent settles onto your collar and your wrists, and for the rest of the day it will follow you around like a quiet secret, catching you by surprise when you turn your head. It is the smell of trying, of caring how you come across, of being young enough to believe that the right hair and the right shirt might just change the whole shape of your day, and who is to say it could not? Then come the clothes. You pull on the denim, soft as an old friend, faded at the seams from 100 washings, and you tuck in the shirt and pop that wide collar just so. Maybe there is a belt with a big buckle, or a pair of sneakers you have drawn on with a ballpoint pen during long, dull classes. You stand back and take yourself in, front and side, chin up, then down. You are not vain exactly. You're just a teenager on the edge of the world, assembling the version of yourself you want to walk out the door as one deliberate piece at a time. There was a slowness to all of it that we have mostly traded away. Nobody was watching you do this. There was no camera in your pocket, no reason to document the moment or measure it against anyone else's. The mirror was the only audience, and the mirror kept your secrets. You could try a hairstyle that didn't work and simply comb it out again. You could sing along to the radio drifting down the hall and dance a little in the small space between the tub and the sink, and no one would ever know. The whole ritual was private in a way that is almost hard to imagine now, when so much of getting ready has become getting ready to be seen by strangers. You lean in one last time and check your teeth, smooth an eyebrow, adjust the collar final quarter inch. The face in the mirror is more awake now, ready, a little hopeful. Behind you the doorknob rattles again, more insistent, and you laugh and call out that you are done. You are done. You flick off the light and open the door into the cooler air of the hallway, and someone pushes past you with a groan of relief, and the whole small ceremony is over as quickly as it began. But you carry it with you, that feeling of being put together, of having made yourself ready with your own two hands. It set the tone for everything that came after. You were not perfect, and you knew it, but you had done the work, slow and careful, and entirely by feel, and you walked into the morning believing the day might just meet you halfway. It is a tender thing, that private preparing, and harder to find now than it used to be. But on a Tuesday morning in 1974, in a fogged-up bathroom that smelled of hairspray and hope, it was simply how the day got started. It is breakfast now, and the kitchen is the warmest room in the house. There is a box of cereal on the table with a cartoon character grinning from the front, and you pour it into a bowl until it heaps, then drown it in cold milk. The little transistor radio on the counter keeps up its cheerful chatter. Your mother moves between the stove and the sink, a dish towel over her shoulder, telling you not to forget your lunch money. Sunlight lands in a bright rectangle across the linoleum floor. Somewhere a spoon clinks against a bowl, the toaster ticks as it cools, and the whole morning smells like coffee and warm bread. You eat quickly, one eye on the clock, but for a moment everything is simple and good. The cereal box stands on the table like a small billboard, all bright colours and bold promises, a maze printed on the back and a coupon you keep meaning to cut out. You read it while you eat, the same way you read it every morning, not because there is anything new on it, but because that is simply what you do at breakfast, your eyes wandering the cardboard while your spoon does its work. The milk has gone faintly sweet and cold at the bottom of the bowl, and you will drink it straight from the rim when the cereal is gone, tipping your head back, and nobody will tell you not to. Your father sits across from you behind his newspaper, folded into quarters, a cup of coffee steaming at his elbow. Every so often he lowers the paper an inch to say something about the ball game or the weather or the price of gas, then raises it again. The radio on the counter murmurs along, the disc jockey trading the morning back and forth with the news, a jingle for a local furniture store, a song you tap your foot to without meaning to. It is a comfortable clutter of sound, the kind that fills a room without asking anything of you. Your mother is the engine of the whole morning. She moves without wasted motion, pouring, wiping, checking. One eye always on the clock over the stove. She sets a plate of toast down in the middle of the table, golden and buttered, and it is gone almost before it lands. She reminds you again about your lunch money, and about your permission slip, and about your jacket, because the mornings are still cool even if the afternoons are turning warm. You answer around a mouthful of cereal, and she gives you that look, and you sit up a little straighter without quite knowing why. The light through the kitchen window is doing something lovely, laying that bright rectangle across the speckled linoleum, catching the steam off the coffee and turning it silver. A younger sibling wanders in half-dressed, hair sticking up, and slides into a chair and reaches for the cereal box with the single-minded focus of the barely awake. The dog sits hopefully at the edge of the table, eyes moving from face to face, sure that today will finally be the day someone drops a crust. There's nothing remarkable about any of it. That is exactly what makes it precious. Because here is the thing you could not possibly have understood at the time. This ordinary breakfast, this cramped warm kitchen with its cluttered table and its chattering radio and its impatient clock. This was the whole family in one room at one time, awake and together and talking before the day scattered everyone to the four winds. No one was staring down into a screen. No one had disappeared into a private world held in the palm of their hand. You looked at each other. You passed the toast. You half listened and fully belonged, all at the same time. You would give a great deal for a morning like this now, if you are honest. The togetherness of it was so casual you barely registered it, the way you barely register the air you breathe. Your mother nagging you about your lunch money was not an interruption of the morning. It was the morning, her love coming out sideways the way love so often does, in reminders and small worries, and one more piece of buttered toast pushed across the table toward you. You tip the bowl and drink the last of the sweet cold milk, and you check the clock, and your stomach gives that small lurch it gives when you realize the easy part of the day is nearly over. You gather your books, your jacket, the lunch money finally in your pocket. Your mother catches you at the door and straightens your collar and tells you to be good, and you duck away from her hand the way teenagers do, embarrassed and grateful in equal measure. Then you're out into the bright morning, the screen door slapping shut behind you, the warmth of the kitchen still on your skin, and the smell of coffee and toast still in your clothes. You carry it with you down the walk, that simple, well-fed, well-loved feeling, without ever once stopping to name it. It was just breakfast. It was just Tuesday. But it was the whole family, all in one room, all at once. And that, it turns out, was everything. Now you are out the door and the morning air is cool and green. Maybe you walk, falling into step with the neighbour kids, kicking a stray pebble the whole way down the sidewalk. Or maybe you wait at the corner for the big yellow bus, and when it groans to a stop, you climb aboard into that unmistakable smell of vinyl seats and diesel and 100 crowded mornings. The seats are cracked and warm, the windows pushed down with a stubborn shove, and the whole thing rattles and sways as it lumbers towards school. Everyone is talking at once, or nobody is talking at all, half of you still blinking away sleep. It is a small daily journey, ordinary as anything, and yet you would remember it forever. If you walk, the neighbourhood unfolds slowly around you, block by familiar block. There is the house with the mean little dog that flings itself at the fence, and you cross to the far side of the street the way you always do. There is the yard with the sprinkler already ticking back and forth, throwing rainbows in the low sun. Somebody's father is out front warming up the car, one arm draped over the open door, calling good morning to another father 2 driveways down. You know these houses the way you know your own hands, and they know you back, and there is a deep unspoken safety in that, in moving through a world where you belong to every porch and every hedge along the way. The pebble travels with you, kicked and chased and kicked again, and it becomes the whole point of the journey somehow, a small game you play against yourself down the length of the sidewalk. Your friends fall in beside you one by one as you pass their houses, spilling out their front doors with their books under their arms, and the little group grows as it goes. You talk about the game, about the test, about who said what to whom, the small, urgent news of teenage life traded back and forth in the cool green air. Nobody's looking down at anything. Everyone is just walking and talking and being 15 on a Tuesday. And if you take the bus, well, the bus is its own small nation. You wait at the corner with the others, shifting from foot to foot until it appears at the end of the street, huge and yellow and grumbling, and eases to a stop with a great sigh of its brakes. The doors fold open, the driver nods you aboard, and you climb up into that smell that no one who rode it ever forgot. Hot vinyl and diesel fumes and the accumulated mornings of 100 kids. You scan the rows for a familiar face, for your usual seat, and drop into it with your knees pressed up against the cracked green bench in front of you. The bus lurches forward, and the whole world begins to sway. You wrestle the window down 2 hard inches, enough to let a ribbon of cool air slide across your face, and you rest your temple against the warm glass and watch the town roll by. Kids are laughing 3 seats up, and someone is quizzing someone else on a spelling list they should have studied last night, and a paper airplane sails over your head from somewhere in the back. The driver calls for everyone to settle down without any real hope of it happening. The engine drones, the morning light strobes gently through the passing trees. There is a particular loneliness and a particular togetherness that live side by side on a school bus, and you feel both at once. You are packed in shoulder to shoulder with people you have known your whole life, and yet your face is turned to the window, and your thoughts are entirely your own, drifting somewhere out past the fields and the filling stations. Nobody hands you a screen to fill the silence. The boredom is just yours to do with as you please, and out of that boredom come the daydreams, the wonderings, the long thoughts about who you are and who you might become, thoughts that need empty time the way a plant needs light. It was such an ordinary thing, this daily crossing from home to school, that at the time it seemed like nothing at all, a stretch of dead time to be endured before the real day began. But it was not nothing. It was the seam between 2 worlds, the walk or the ride where you got to belong to neither one for a little while, where the morning air or the swaying bus held you gently in between. You would come to remember the cracked seats and the stubborn windows and the pebbles skittering ahead of you, long after you'd forgotten whatever waited at the other end. The bus wheezes to a stop in front of the school, or the sidewalk finally delivers you to the big front doors, and the small journey is over. You gather your books and shuffle forward with everyone else, back into the noise and rush of the crowd. But for those few unhurried minutes, walking or riding through the cool green morning, the day had not yet asked anything of you. And on a Tuesday in 1974, that small daily passage felt like the most ordinary thing in the world, right up until the years turned it into something you would give anything to take just once more. The school doors swing open and the hallway swallows you whole. It is a river of noise and motion, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on the waxed floor, voices bouncing off the cinder block walls. Your locker sticks the way it always does, and you give it that practiced little bump with your hip until it pops open. Inside, a mirror, a few taped-up photos, a forgotten sweater. The air smells of floor polish and pencil shavings and the faint, sharp tang of the cafeteria warming up somewhere far off. Friends drift by, and you trade a word, a laugh, a shove on the shoulder. The bell is about to ring, and there is a particular kind of belonging in being carried along by that crowd. All of you headed the same way at once. The hallway is a world unto itself, long and bright and endless, lined on both sides with those tall metal lockers in their faded institutional colours. The floor gleams where the janitor ran the buffer the night before, and the light comes down flat, and even from the fixtures overhead, catching the motion of 100 kids all moving at once. You know the rhythm of it in your body by now. You know which way the current flows, where it bunches up, where you can slip through. You move with it the way a fish moves in a stream, without thinking, carried and carrying at the same time. Your locker holds your whole school life in its narrow metal frame. There is the little mirror stuck to the door, warped just slightly, so your face looks longer than it is. There are the photos taped up inside, curling at the corners, friends squinting into some long-ago summer sun. There is a schedule you never look at anymore, a stub of a pencil, a candy wrapper you keep meaning to throw away, and that sweater your mother swears you never wear balled up in the bottom. You swap out one book for another, the metal cold against your knuckles, and give the door that hip check to close it, because it never closes any other way. The sounds wash over you, and every one of them is familiar. There is the clang and rattle of the lockers up and down the row, the squeak of rubber soles, the burst of laughter from a knot of kids by the water fountain. There is the low drone of the fluorescent lights that you only notice when everything else goes quiet. Somewhere a teacher is telling somebody to slow down. Somewhere a couple is standing too close together, oblivious, and the crowd just parts around them. The whole place hums with the electric energy of young people packed together, restless and alive and going somewhere all at once. Your friends find you the way they always do, materializing out of the flow. Somebody claps you on the shoulder, somebody else falls into step beside you, and you're trading the news of the last 12 hours as if you had been apart for a week. There is an ease to it that you will spend the rest of your life trying to get back. These are people you see every single day, whose faces are as familiar as the hallway itself, and being among them requires no effort, no arranging, no plan. You simply show up, and there they are, and there you are, all of you flowing toward the same first bell. That is the thing about a school hallway that you could not have named at the time. It was community in its purest, most accidental form. You did not choose it. You were simply thrown together with the same few hundred kids year after year, and out of that constant proximity grew a whole tangled web of friendships and rivalries and crushes and jokes, an entire small society that existed nowhere else and would never exist again. No one had a device to retreat into. If you wanted to be somewhere else, you had to daydream your way there, and mostly you did not, because right here was where everything was happening. It could be overwhelming, of course. The crowd could feel like too much some mornings, the noise too loud, the eyes too many. But even on those days there was a comfort buried in it. The comfort of being one small part of a much larger thing, of being carried along by a current bigger than yourself. You belonged to that hallway whether you felt like it or not, and it belonged to you, and there was a strange safety in numbers, in being just another kid among all the others, headed the same direction at the same hour of the same ordinary day. The bell rings, high and shrill, and the whole river surges toward its many mouths. Doors are opening all down the corridor, swallowing kids in twos and threes, and the crowd thins and thins until you're slipping into your own classroom on the last echo of the bell. You take your seat and the hallway empties behind you, gone quiet and gleaming and waiting for the next rush. But you carry the feeling of it with you into the room, that hum of belonging, that sense of being one small note in a very large and living chord. It was only a hallway. But on a Tuesday in 1974, it was also the whole warm, crowded heart of being young. Now you slide into your seat as the second bell rings. The classroom is bright with fluorescent light, the desks bolted in tidy rows, the chalkboard wiped to a soft grey haze. Your teacher takes attendance from a worn paper roster, and there is the crackle of the intercom as the morning announcements begin. A voice reading the lunch menu and reminding everyone about the game on Friday. Someone passes back a mimeographed handout, still faintly damp, and you press it to your face out of habit just to breathe in that sweet purple ink smell that every kid of the era knew by heart. The radiator hisses under the window. Outside, a bird is carrying on, and the whole ordinary school day stretches ahead of you, unremarkable and complete. The desk is the same one you have every morning, and you know its every scar. There are initials carved into the wooden top by some kid long gone, and a wad of gum pressed underneath that you found once with your knee and have carefully avoided ever since. The metal frame is cold and the seat is hard, and you settle into it and arrange your books and fold your hands and become, for a few minutes, part of the tidy geometry of the room, one student among 30, all facing the same direction, all waiting for the day to be officially declared. Your teacher stands at the front with the roster, calling the names in order, and you answer to yours when it comes around, a quick word into the settling quiet. There is something steadying about the ritual of it, this daily counting, this small ceremony of being accounted for, of being here. The chalkboard behind the teacher is wiped to that soft grey cloud that never quite comes clean, ghosts of yesterday's lessons still faintly visible if you tilt your head. A globe sits on the corner of the desk, and a map of the country is pulled down over part of the board, its edges curling with age. Then the intercom crackles to life, that little speaker up in the corner of the room clearing its throat, and the whole class goes still to listen. A voice, tinny and important, reads out the announcements for the day. There is the lunch menu, delivered with great solemnity. There is a reminder about the game on Friday, and a plea for someone to return the equipment they borrowed, and a note about a club meeting after school. You half listen, the way everyone half listens, your eyes wandering to the window, but the sound of that voice filling the room is as much a part of the morning as the bell itself. The handout comes down the row, passed hand to hand over shoulders, and when it reaches you it is still cool and just barely damp, fresh off the machine in the office. You do the thing every single kid did without ever being taught to, without even deciding to. You lift it to your face and breathe in deep. That smell, sweet and sharp and chemical and purple, the smell of a freshly run mimeograph, unmistakable and utterly gone from the world now. It is a small sensory miracle you will chase in your memory for the rest of your life and never quite find again. The radiator under the window hisses and clanks, filling the room with a dry warmth that makes you a little sleepy. Outside the glass, a bird is going on about something, and a groundskeeper pushes a mower across the far edge of the field, the sound of it drifting in faint and far away. The light overhead is flat and bright, and buzzes very softly if you listen for it. There is nothing exciting happening. There's nothing to look at but the backs of your classmates' heads and the grey board and the curling map, and yet you are entirely present, because there is nowhere else your attention can go. That is the quiet gift of it, though you would never have called it a gift at the time. Boredom, real boredom, the kind with nowhere to run. Your mind had only the room and the window and your own thoughts to work with, and so it worked with them. You watched the bird, you wondered about things, you let your attention drift and settle and drift again, and in that drifting you became, slowly, a person with an inner life, a private world no announcement could reach. It is a kind of stillness that is nearly impossible to come by now, when every empty second offers 1,000 places to disappear to. The intercom clicks off. The teacher sets down the roster and the real day begins. Books open, pencils come out. The ordinary machinery of learning grinds slowly into motion, But for those few minutes at the start, the room held you gently in place, counted and warm and slightly bored, breathing in purple ink and listening to a bird and a stranger's voice reading out the lunch. It was the most unremarkable few minutes imaginable. And on a Tuesday in 1974, it was also somehow complete. It is somewhere in the middle of second period now, and the real conversation has gone quiet and underground. A note travels toward you, folded into an impossible little triangle or a tight paper football, passed hand to hand while the teacher's back is turned. You unfold it carefully under your desk, reading the careful bubble letters, the tiny drawings in the margins, the questions circled at the bottom with 2 boxes, yes and no. Your heart does a small, quiet flip. This is how news travelled, how friendships were tended, how crushes were confessed, all in pencil, all in secret, all so wonderfully slow. There were no glowing screens to hide behind, just folded paper and the thrill of not getting caught, and somehow that made every word feel like it mattered more. The teacher is up at the board, chalk squeaking as she works through a problem, her back a wall of turned attention, and the whole class has learned to live in the small margin she leaves. The note arrived by way of 3 sets of hands, each one waiting for its moment, each one passing it along with the practiced casualness of a spy. Now it sits in your palm under the lip of your desk, folded so tight and so clever, it is almost a shame to open it. A tiny origami secret you have to work at with your fingernails to unfold. Inside, the handwriting is as familiar to you as a voice. You know whose it is before you read a word, know it from the loop of the letters and the little heart dotting the I. There are doodles crowding the margins, a flower, a lightning bolt, a caricature of the teacher with an enormous nose that makes you press your lips together hard to keep from laughing out loud. And there at the bottom, the question, the real reason for all of it, written small and circled twice, with the 2 little boxes waiting beneath it. Yes, no, as if a whole future could be decided by which one you checked. Your heart does that quiet flip again. You glance up to make sure the teacher is still occupied, then down at the note, then across the room to where your friend is very deliberately not looking at you, staring straight ahead with a face carefully arranged to give nothing away. You bend low over the paper, shielding it with your arm, and you take up your pencil, and you think about your answer with a seriousness that would embarrass you to admit. Because it matters. In this small, folded world, it matters enormously. There was an art to all of it that we have almost entirely lost. The folding, first of all, the elaborate geometry that kept your words safe from prying eyes, each style with its own name and its own devoted practitioners, the timing, the patience, the long wait between sending a note and getting one back, an ache of anticipation stretched across a whole class period, and the physical fact of the thing, a real object, held and folded and carried in a pocket, sometimes for years, tucked into a shoebox with the other treasures of your youth. A note was not a message that vanished the instant it was read. It was a keepsake, it was proof, and because it was slow, because it cost you something in nerve and patience and risk, every word landed with a weight that our instant messages can never quite carry. You did not fire off a dozen careless lines. You chose your words in pencil, knowing they could not be taken back, knowing this scrap of paper might be read and reread and passed along and pored over. You put your actual self on the line, your handwriting, your doodles, your circled question, all of it undeniably and permanently you. There was no hiding behind a screen, no deleting, no pretending later that you had not meant it. The danger was half the thrill, of course. The whole enterprise was forbidden, conducted right under the nose of authority, and getting caught meant the ultimate humiliation. Your private words read aloud to the whole snickering class. So you developed a 6th sense for it. a way of feeling the teacher's attention shift before she even turned, of freezing mid-fold, of sliding the note under a textbook in one smooth motion. You and your co-conspirators moved as one, a small silent society operating in the gaps of the official world, and the shared risk bound you together more tightly than any easy convenience ever could. You finish your answer, check the box, fold the note back up along its careful creases, and wait for your moment. When it comes, you pass it off with a flick of your wrist, and it begins its slow journey back across the room, hand to hand, heart to heart. You watch it go, and you turn your eyes back to the board and try to look like a student, though inside you're anything but calm. It was only a folded scrap of paper, only a question with two little boxes. But on a Tuesday in 1974, passed in secret while the chalk squeaked on, it felt like the most important message ever sent. The lunch bell rings and the cafeteria fills up like a rising tide. There is the clatter of trays, the squeak of long benches dragged across the floor, the roar of 100 conversations all at once. You slide your tray along the metal rails while lunch ladies in hairnets ladle out something steaming, and you fish your crumpled bills from your pocket at the register. Maybe you brought your own lunch in a paper sack, a sandwich in wax paper, a bag of chips, a cookie your mother tucked in as a small surprise. You find your people at your usual table, the same faces every day, and you trade snacks and stories and laughter loud enough to draw a look from the teacher on duty. For half an hour, the whole world is just this room and these friends. The cafeteria is enormous and echoing, a great high-ceilinged room built to hold the entire hungry school at once, and when the doors open it fills in a matter of minutes. The long tables stretch away in rows, their attached benches swinging out on their hinges, and the sound of 100 of them being pulled out at the same moment is a rolling thunder you feel in your teeth. Above it all rises the roar of voices, so many voices laughing and calling and arguing that no single word survives, only the great warm ocean of sound that means lunch has arrived and the morning is behind you. If you buy your lunch, you take your place in the long line and slide your tray down the rails, and the lunch ladies serve you from behind the steaming counter, cheerful and brisk in their aprons and hairnets. There is the plop of the mashed potatoes, the clunk of the little dish of fruit cocktail, the carton of milk pulled cold and sweating from the crate. You dig your crumpled lunch money from the depths of your pocket at the register, smoothing the wrinkled bills, counting out the coins, and the woman at the register takes it without ever seeming to look at it, her hands moving from long habit. And if you bring your lunch, there is a small ceremony to that too. You pull the paper sack from your bag, worn soft, your name written on it in your mother's hand, and you unpack it piece by piece. The sandwich in its wax paper, folded the particular way she always folds it. The bag of chips, the apple, and sometimes, if it is a good day, a cookie or a little note tucked in as a surprise, a small message of love sent along to find you in the middle of your day. You do not always notice it, but it is there. You carry your lunch to your table, the same table it has always been, where the same faces are already gathered, saving your spot without being asked. This is your tribe, the small, fierce group that formed some time back in the mists of grade school and has held together through everything since. You drop onto the bench and the conversation folds you in without missing a beat. Somebody is telling a story with their hands. Somebody is trying to trade a pudding cup for a bag of chips. Somebody does an impression of a teacher that sends the whole table into helpless laughter, loud enough that the teacher on lunch duty shoots a warning look down the row. You trade food off each other's trays without asking, the way only true friends do. A fry here, a bite of cookie there, an economy running entirely on trust and affection. You lean in close to hear the good gossip over the roar, then throw your head back at the punchline. For half an hour, nothing exists beyond this table. The morning's classes, the afternoon still to come, the worries waiting at home, all of it falls away, and there is only this bright, loud room, and these people who know you best in all the world. It seems like such a small thing, a school lunch. But it was one of the great daily gatherings of your young life, a half hour carved out of the day where the only agenda was each other. No one was staring into a phone. No one was somewhere else in their head. You were all fully, loudly, gloriously present, packed onto those benches, talking over each other, laughing until milk came dangerously close to your nose. The connection was total because there was nothing to compete with it, nowhere else for anyone's attention to wander. The bell rings all too soon, and the whole room groans and begins to rise, dumping trays, gathering bags, the tide going back out as quickly as it came in. You bus your tray and shoulder your things and let yourself be swept back toward the afternoon, still laughing at something, still warm from the company. The cafeteria empties and echoes behind you, waiting to fill again tomorrow. It was only lunch, but on a Tuesday in 1974, for one loud and golden half hour, it was the whole entire world. Now comes gym class, and the mood shifts entirely. You change into your shorts and your worn sneakers in a locker room, thick with the smell of rubber and floor wax and somebody's spray deodorant. The gymnasium is enormous and echoing, the polished wood floor gleaming under the high lights, the bleachers folded up against the wall. The coach blows a whistle that pierces straight through you, and you line up for calisthenics, for laps, for a game of dodgeball that turns fierce and joyful in an instant. Your face goes red, your lungs burn, the basketball hoop rattles when someone finally sinks a shot. It is exhausting and a little embarrassing and completely alive. And afterward, flushed and breathless, you feel that particular clean tiredness that only comes from running around for no reason at all. The locker room is its own strange country, humid and loud and echoing off the tile, and you change quickly the way you've learned to into the gym uniform that never quite fits anyone right. The air is thick with a smell you would know anywhere. Rubber soles and floor wax and industrial soap and a fog of somebody's aerosol deodorant hanging over it all. Lockers bang. Someone snaps a towel. Somebody is bragging about something. Somebody else is dreading the run. And the whole room buzzes with the particular nervous energy of kids about to be made to move. Then out into the gymnasium, which always seems impossibly large after the cramped locker room, its ceiling soaring up into shadow, its floor a gleaming expanse of honey-coloured wood polished to a shine. The bleachers are folded flat against the walls, and the lines painted on the floor cross and overlap in their mysterious geometry, and up in the rafters the banners hang faded with the years. Your sneakers squeak on the finish when you walk, and the sound of the whole class squeaking and shuffling into rows fills the vast space and comes echoing back down. The coach appears with the whistle already at his lips, and when he blows it, the sound goes straight through your skull and out the other side. You line up in rows and do your jumping jacks, your toe touches, your push-ups, counting them off together in a ragged chorus. Then the laps around and around the gym or out onto the track, your breath coming harder, your face going hot, the slower kids falling back and the fast ones pulling ahead the way they always do. There is no hiding in gym class. Whatever you are, fast or slow, coordinated or hopeless, it is on display for everyone, and there is a raw honesty to that which is uncomfortable and somehow also freeing. And then, if you're lucky, the game. Dodgeball maybe. The balls lined up along the centre court, everyone crouched and ready, and at the whistle the whole class explodes into motion. The gym erupts, balls flying, kids shrieking and diving, alliances forming and shattering in seconds. Or basketball. The ball pounding on the wood, sneakers stopping and starting with sharp barks, the hoop rattling and the net snapping when someone finally makes the shot, and the whole team roars. Whatever the game, it turns fierce and joyful in an instant, and you throw yourself into it completely, red-faced and breathless and utterly absorbed. Your lungs burn and your heart hammers and you are sweating through your shirt, and none of it matters, because your whole self has narrowed down to this one bright, immediate thing, this game, this moment, this ball coming toward you. There is no room in your head for anything else. The test you were worried about, the note you passed, the plans for the weekend, all of it is gone, burned away by pure physical effort. Your body has taken over, and your body is happy, and that is a kind of relief you did not even know you needed until it arrives. There is something in that we have quietly let slip away. The simple animal joy of running around for no reason at all, of using your body hard just because you are young and it works, of getting sweaty and winded and gloriously tired in the middle of an ordinary school day. It was not exercise, not the way we think of it now, not a task to be tracked and measured. It was play, the same play you had done since you were small, and it kept something alive in you that the classroom could not touch. The final whistle blows and the game breaks up, and you troop back to the locker room, spent and flushed, still catching your breath, replaying the best moments to anyone who will listen. You splash cold water on your face and change back into your regular clothes, your hair damp at the temples, your whole body humming with that clean, pleasant exhaustion. And when you walk back out into the hallway, into the rest of the day, you feel lighter somehow, emptied out and refilled. It was only gym class. But on a Tuesday in 1974, for one sweaty, breathless, fiercely happy hour, it reminded you what it felt like to simply be a body, young and moving and alive. At 3 o'clock the final bell rings, and the whole building seems to exhale at once. Doors bang open, lockers slam one last time, and a great flood of teenagers pours out into the bright afternoon. The sun is warm on your face after the cool of the classrooms, and the freedom of it hits you like a wave. Buses idle in a long yellow row, engines grumbling. Kids scatter in every direction, some toward home, some toward the field, some toward nowhere in particular with a whole open afternoon ahead. You feel your backpack settle on your shoulders, hear the shouts and laughter fading behind you, and step into those unclaimed hours that belonged so completely to you. There was nothing quite like the feeling of school letting out. The last minutes before the bell are the longest of the whole day. You watch the clock's hand crawl, your things already gathered, your body leaning toward the door though your teacher is still talking. And then it comes, that shrill electric ring that means release, and the room breaks apart before the sound has even finished. Chairs scrape, voices rise, and the teacher's last words about tonight's reading are lost entirely in the scramble. You're up and out and into the hallway with everyone else, part of the great homeward surge. The hallways fill and roar one final time, the lockers banging open and shut in a long ragged chorus, and then you hit the doors and burst out into the open air. The sun is there to meet you, warm and bright after the long fluorescent hours indoors, and it lands on your face and your shoulders like something you can almost hold. The whole world seems suddenly larger, louder, more colourful, and your chest fills with a feeling so pure it is almost dizzying. Free. For the rest of the day, until dinner, until dark, you are free. The buses wait in their long yellow line along the curb, engines grumbling, doors folded open, filling up with the kids who ride them home. Other kids are unlocking their bikes from the rack, or piling into a friend's older brother's car, or simply setting off on foot in 2s and 3s across the lawn. The parking lot and the front steps and the sidewalk swarm with teenagers pulling on jackets, shouting plans across the crowd, splitting off in every direction at once. There is a beautiful chaos to it, this daily scattering, this moment when the school opens its doors and lets its whole restless population loose upon the afternoon. You settle your backpack onto your shoulders and choose your direction, and just like that you have stepped out of the ordered world of bells and rows and raised hands and into the wide unstructured hours that belong to you and you alone. Nobody's watching you now. Nobody's expecting anything of you for a while. The afternoon stretches ahead, unplanned and unclaimed, and you can fill it however you like, with the record store or the field or the long slow ride home the back way just to make it last. That feeling is one of the great luxuries of a childhood in that era, and it is one we have largely stopped giving. Those hours were genuinely unsupervised, genuinely open. No one could reach you once you left the building. There was no way for the school to text your parents, no way for your parents to track where you wandered, no glowing tether pulling you back toward obligation. You disappeared into the afternoon, and the afternoon was yours, and out of all that empty unclaimed time came the adventures and the friendships and the daydreams that made you who you are. You could go anywhere, do anything, or do nothing at all, which was often the very best option. You could lie in the grass and watch the clouds. You could ride your bike in aimless loops around the neighbourhood. You could sit on a friend's front steps and talk about everything and nothing until the streetlights came on. The hours were not filled for you. You had to fill them yourself, and in the filling you learned who you were, what you liked, how to be a person alone with your own free time and your own good company. The shouts and laughter of the emptying school fade behind you as you walk, and the ordinary street opens up ahead, dappled with afternoon sun. The whole long golden stretch of the day is yours now, unspent, waiting. There was nothing in the world quite like that feeling. The doors flung open, the sun on your face, the bell still ringing in your ears as you stepped out into freedom. And on a Tuesday in 1974, with a whole open afternoon laid out before you like a gift, it felt like the truest happiness there was. Now you and a friend push open the door of the record store and a little bell jingles overhead. Inside it is cool and dim and smells of cardboard and vinyl and someone's clove cigarette drifting from the back. Rows and rows of album covers stand in their bins, and you walk your fingers along them slowly, flipping through the artwork, the colours, the faces of the bands you love. Music is playing over the shop speakers, something loud and good, and the guy behind the counter nods along without looking up. You have saved your allowance for weeks for this, and choosing just one record feels enormous, almost sacred. You hold it in both hands like something precious, because it was precious, in a way that is hard to explain to anyone who never had to wait and save and choose. The store is narrow and a little cluttered, the way the good ones always were, every inch of wall covered in posters and price tags and handwritten signs advertising what was new that week. The light is low and golden, filtering down over the bins, and the whole place has the hushed and reverent feel of a chapel, though the music playing is anything but hushed. You and your friend split up without a word, each drifting toward your own corner, because record shopping is a thing you do together and alone at the same time, side by side but lost in your own separate searching. You start flipping. There is a rhythm to it your fingers already know, that steady click and shuffle of cardboard against cardboard as one album gives way to the next. Each cover is its own small world, a painting, a photograph, a design, and you linger on the ones that catch you, tilting them up into the light to study the artwork, turning them over to read the track listings on the back. Some you know by heart already, old friends. Others you have only heard about, whispered names you have been dying to hear, and to hold one at last in your two hands is a small thrill that runs right up your arms. The guy behind the counter is a fixture, cooler than anyone you actually know, and he presides over the store with an easy indifference that only makes him more impressive. He has the new stuff before anyone, and if you catch him in a good mood, he might tell you what is worth hearing, might drop a name that sends you flipping frantically through the bins. Right now, he is just nodding along to whatever is spinning on the shop's turntable, cranked up loud and filling the whole space, and every so often a customer stops dead in the aisle, head cocked, and asks him what it is. That was part of the magic, hearing something new pour out of those speakers and not knowing what it was, feeling it grab you before you even had a name for it. You could not simply summon any song ever recorded out of the air. You had to find it. You had to be somewhere, in a store like this, or beside a radio waiting when it happened to play. And when it caught you, when a song reached out and took hold, the only way to keep it was to buy it, to carry it home in a paper sleeve and make it yours, which is why the choosing matters so much. You've been saving for weeks, quarters and crumpled bills, skipping the burger stand and hoarding your lunch money, all of it building toward this one purchase, and you can afford exactly one album. One. So you stand there in the golden light with 2 records in your hands, weighing them against each other, agonizing, because this decision feels enormous, because in a sense it is. This is not a thing you can undo with a tap. This is your money, hard saved, spent on a single object you will live with for a long, long time. You make your choice at last, the way you always do, some final tug of the heart deciding it. You carry the winner up to the counter and the cool guy rings it up without ceremony, sliding it into a paper bag, and you count out your money coin by coin and hand it over. And then it is yours. You hold the bag against your chest on the walk home, and you cannot stop thinking about it. About the moment you will finally get to drop the needle and hear the whole thing, start to finish, the way it was meant to be heard. Because that was the other half of it, the listening. You did not skip around. You did not sample a track and move on. You brought the record home and you played it all the way through, side 1 and then side 2, lying on your bedroom floor with the sleeve in your hands, reading every word, studying every photo, learning the album the way you might learn a person. It cost you something to own it, and so you gave it your whole attention, and it gave you everything back. That is what is so hard to explain now. When all the music ever made sits waiting in everyone's pocket, free and endless and strangely weightless. Back then a record was a treasure precisely because it was scarce, because you had to want it and wait for it and choose it and pay for it. You held it in both hands like something precious because it was. And on a Tuesday afternoon in 1974, walking home with one hard-won album pressed to your chest, you carried more happiness in that little paper bag than a whole library of songs could give you today. Let us wander over to the mall now, that shining new cathedral of the 1970s. The automatic doors whoosh open, and the cool air rushes out to meet you, along with the smell of fresh pretzels and department store perfume. A fountain burbles in the centre court, coins glinting at its bottom. You drift from window to window with no money and no plan, just the pleasure of being somewhere with your friends and know where you had to be. There is the pet shop with the puppies in the glass, the store with the blaring stereo, the food court with its orange plastic chairs. You share a soft pretzel and split a soda with 2 straws. It was less about buying anything and more about simply being there, together, killing a bright and endless afternoon. The mall was still a wonder then, still new enough to feel like the future, and stepping inside from the hot parking lot was like stepping into another world. The air was cool and clean and always faintly perfumed, and the light came down soft and even from skylights far overhead, and everything gleamed. The polished floors, the chrome railings, the glass storefronts stretching away in both directions. You could spend a whole afternoon here and never once go outside, and on a warm day, or a cold one, that felt like a small miracle. The fountain in the centre court was the heart of the place, its water catching the light as it rose and fell, its bottom paved with pennies and dimes tossed in on 1,000 wishes. You lean on the railing for a while and watch it, and maybe you dig a coin out of your own pocket and flip it in, watching it wink and tumble down to join the rest. Around you the mall flows on, mothers with strollers, old couples out for their slow daily walk, and packs of teenagers just like you. All of you circling and drifting with no particular purpose beyond being here. And that was the whole point, really, though no one would have said so out loud. You came with no money and no plan and no need to be anywhere else. And that was the luxury of it. You drifted from window to window, pressing your face to the glass of the store with the good stereos, lingering at the shop that sold the posters and the black lights, wandering into the department store just to ride the escalators up and down and spray each other with the perfume samples until someone in a smock gave you a look. The pet shop was a required stop, always, and you crowded around the front window with the puppies tumbling over each other behind the glass, and you named them, and you argued about which one you would take home if only you could, and for a few minutes you forgot you were nearly grown and were just kids again, palms flat against the window, hearts breaking a little at all that hopeful fur. Then someone would tug you along, and you would drift on, laughing toward the next bright thing. Eventually you would end up at the food court, that great echoing hall of orange plastic chairs bolted to the floor, and little counters selling every kind of quick, bright food. You never had much, but you always had enough for a soft pretzel, warm and salty, torn in half and shared, and a single soda that you split with 2 straws, heads bent together over the cup. You would claim a table and sprawl there for as long as you could get away with, watching the crowds go by, cracking jokes, doing nothing at all with tremendous dedication. There was nothing to accomplish here, and that was exactly the gift of it. You were not shopping, not really, not with your empty pockets. You were simply passing time in each other's company, and the mall gave you a warm, bright, endless place to do it. Somewhere to be that was neither home nor school. Somewhere that belonged, for a few hours, entirely to the young. It was a place to see and be seen, to run into people, to feel yourself part of the loose, happy crowd of everyone your age doing the exact same delightful nothing. We have mostly lost that now, that idea of a public place where you could just be, for free, for hours, with no one hurrying you along and nothing you had to buy. The kind of place where the whole plan was your friends and the afternoon and a shared pretzel. Where killing time was not wasted time, but some of the best time there was. Nobody was staring down at a phone. Everybody was right there, together, present in the cool perfumed air. At last, the light through the skylights would begin to slant and soften, and someone would check the big clock and realize it was nearly time to be home, and you would drift reluctantly back toward those automatic doors. They would whoosh open and the warm outside air would hit you all at once, and you would blink in the low gold sun of the ending day, a little sad it was over. It was only the mall, but on a Tuesday afternoon in 1974, wandering those bright corridors with your friends and no money and nowhere to be, it felt like the whole wide, wonderful world. Now follow the sound of electronic beeps and bells into the arcade, dim and neon-lit and thrilling. The pinball machines line the walls, flashing and chiming, their glass tops warm under your palms as you nudge and tilt and chase the silver ball. There is the satisfying thunk of a quarter dropping into the slot, the clatter of the flippers, the groan of the whole crowd when someone's ball drains away. The air is close and warm and smells of electronics and spilled soda. Older kids lean against the machines looking impossibly cool. You feed in your last coin, wipe your hands on your jeans, and lean in for one more game. Every quarter felt like it mattered, every high score a small immortality, your initials glowing there for whoever came next. The arcade was a cave, dim and close and glowing, and stepping into it from the bright afternoon was like slipping underwater into some deep electric reef. The only light came from the machines themselves, their back glasses lit up in impossible colours, their flippers and bumpers flashing, and the whole place pulsed and chimed and rang with 100 overlapping sounds. It was loud and warm and a little disreputable, exactly the kind of place your mother wondered aloud about, which of course only made it better. The pinball machine stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, each one a whole gaudy world unto itself, painted with rockets or race cars or fierce painted women, their glass tops smudged with the fingerprints of everyone who had come before. You picked your machine the way you picked a horse, by feel, by loyalty, by which one had been kind to you last time. You dug your quarter out of your pocket, that last precious quarter, and slid it into the slot, and there was that deep satisfying thunk as it dropped, and the machine woke up under your hands with a triumphant fanfare ready to do battle. Then the ball was in play, and the whole world narrowed to the glass and the flippers and the silver ball careening through the lights. You worked the buttons, snapping the flippers, and you learned quickly what every seasoned player knew, that the game was played as much with your hips as your hands. You nudged the machine, leaned into it, coaxed the ball where you wanted it to go, walking that fine line right up to the edge of a tilt. Too gentle, and you lost your shot. Too rough, and the machine froze up cold and punished you, the dreaded word flashing its judgment across the glass. The crowd was half the fun. Kids gathered behind the good players, watching over their shoulders, and every dramatic save drew a murmur of respect, and every ball lost down, the drain drew a collective groan, as if the whole arcade had been rooting for that single silver ball. The older kids leaned against the machines along the back wall with a studied cool you could only dream of, and you watched them out of the corner of your eye, learning how to stand, how to shrug, how to lose without seeming to care. The air was thick and warm, close with the heat of all those machines and all those bodies, and it smelled of electronics and dust and the sticky ghost of spilled soda soaked into the carpet. Your palms went damp against the glass, and you wiped them on your jeans between games, and your last quarter felt heavier in your pocket than any coin ever should, because it was your last, because when it was gone the afternoon was over, because every single quarter here had to count. And that was the thing that made it all matter so much. Your quarters were finite and hard won, and so every game carried real weight, real stakes. You could not simply start over, endlessly, for free. When your ball drained and your last coin was spent, that was it, and you had to walk away, and so you played every ball like it was precious because it was. There was a discipline in that scarcity, a focus, a thrill that came precisely from the fact that you could not do this forever. The great prize, of course, the thing you were really playing for, was the high score. Beat the number glowing at the top of the screen, and the machine would let you enter your initials, 3 little letters that would sit there flashing for every player who came after, proof that you had been here, that you'd been the best, at least until someone better came along. It was a small and silly kind of immortality. 3 letters on a pinball machine in a dim arcade. But at 15 it felt like carving your name into the very face of history. At last your final quarter is spent, your last ball gone, and you step back from the machine blinking, your ears ringing faintly in the sudden absence of the game. The arcade glows and chimes on around you without missing a beat, indifferent, already belonging to the next kid stepping up with a quarter in hand. You push back out into the daylight, half dazed, your initials maybe still glowing back there in the dark. It was only an arcade. But on a Tuesday afternoon in 1974, with your last quarter dropping into the slot, it held all the thrill and all the stakes that a young heart could possibly want. It is early evening now, and you're stretched across the hallway floor with a family telephone, that heavy thing bolted to the kitchen wall, its coiled cord pulled to its absolute limit. You have dragged it as far as it will go, around the corner, into the closet almost, chasing the one scrap of privacy the house allows. Your friend is on the other end, and the two of you talk about nothing and everything, laughing, going quiet, laughing again. Someone else in the family keeps hovering, needing the line. There is no texting, no waiting to reply when you feel like it. Just the two of you, connected by a wire and a mile of ordinary talk. It was slower and stranger and somehow far more intimate than we tend to remember. There was only the one phone, of course, and it lived where the whole family could reach it. Mounted on the kitchen wall or sitting fat and important on its own little table in the hall. It was heavy, built like it was meant to last 100 years, and it had that long coiled cord that stretched and sprang and tangled. And learning the exact limit of that cord was a survival skill every teenager mastered. You knew precisely how far it would reach, and you dragged it there, around the corner, down the hall, into the coat closet with the door pulled almost shut, seeking whatever thin privacy the house would grant. You lie on the floor because that is simply how it is done, on your back with your knees up, or on your stomach with your feet in the air, the receiver warm against your ear, the cord looped around your finger. Your friend is on the other end, in their own house, in their own tangle of cord, and between you runs a single wire and a whole evening of talk. And you talk about everything. The day, the teacher, the game, who likes whom, a song, a joke, a worry, a long, comfortable silence where neither of you says anything at all and neither of you hangs up. The trouble, always, was the family. That one phone belonged to everyone, and so your long private conversation was a public act, conducted right there in the shared heart of the house. Someone was always hovering, needing to make a call, sighing loudly, asking how much longer, reminding you that the line was not yours alone. A parent might pick up the extension in another room and clear their throat pointedly. A sibling might lurk nearby, making faces, trying to make you laugh, threatening to tell everyone what you had said. Privacy was a thing you had to fight for, scrap by scrap. And yet, strangely, that made the connection deeper, not shallower. Because talking on the phone was the only way to reach your friend once the day was done and you were sealed in your separate houses. And because it cost you something, the effort, the risk of being overheard, the ticking awareness that others needed the line, you gave it your whole self. You were not half present, thumbing at a screen while a conversation limped along in the background. You were there, fully, ear pressed to the receiver, listening to the breath and the laugh and the pauses of someone you loved, doing nothing else at all. There was no texting to hide behind, no way to craft the perfect reply at your leisure, no emoji to stand in for a feeling you were afraid to say. There was only your voice and their voice, live and unedited in real time. You had to actually talk and actually listen and be brave enough to let the silences sit there between you, and in those silences something tender and real would often grow. You could hear a smile in a voice. You could hear a heart break a little. The whole conversation was alive in a way that words on a glowing screen can never quite be. It was slower, and it was stranger, and it was gloriously inefficient. You could not multitask it. You could not do it lying in bed alone with the door locked. You had to plant yourself in the hallway, tethered by a cord, in earshot of your whole family, and carve out your closeness right there in the middle of everything. And so a phone call was an event, something you looked forward to all day, a stretch of pure connection you had to earn and protect and eventually, reluctantly, give up when your mother finally insisted the line was needed. The evening deepens outside the windows as you talk, the light going blue and then grey, and someone flips on the kitchen light and starts on the dishes just a few feet away. And still you talk, lowering your voice, curling tighter into your corner. Eventually the sigh comes, the final warning, the hand held out for the phone, and you tell your friend you have to go, and neither of you hangs up, and you say it again. And still neither of you does, because ending it is somehow the hardest part. At last you set the heavy receiver back in its cradle with a satisfying click and unfold yourself stiffly from the floor, your ear warm, your heart full, the whole conversation still humming in you. The cord springs back into its tangle. The phone goes quiet on the wall, waiting for whoever needs it next. It was only a phone call tangled up and overheard and fought for. But on an ordinary evening in 1974, stretched out on the hallway floor with a wire connecting you to someone you loved, it was as close as two people could get across the whole dark distance of the night. Now the books come out and it is time for homework, spread across the kitchen table in the soft yellow light of the overhead lamp. There's a pencil to sharpen, a page of math problems, a paperback novel with a cracked spine. You work slowly, chewing the end of your pencil, erasing until the paper goes thin and grey. The radio plays low in the background. Somewhere your mother is starting dinner, and the smell of onions in the pan begins to fill the room. There is no computer to look anything up on, only the heavy encyclopedia on the shelf and your own patient effort. It was tedious, sure, but there was a certain quiet dignity to it. The whole family in their separate corners, everyone busy, the evening settling gently over the house. The kitchen table was the workhorse of the house, and in the early evening it became your desk. You cleared a space among the salt and pepper shakers and the day's mail, and spread your books out under the warm pool of light from the overhead lamp. There was a ceremony to getting started, the sharpening of the pencil first of all, the little hand crank sharpener screwed to the wall, or the small plastic one you turned by hand, and the satisfying point that came out the end, and the curls of shaved wood you swept into your palm. Then the work itself, slow and honest. A page of math problems marching down the sheet, each one a small puzzle to be worried at until it gave up its answer. You worked in pencil because you made mistakes. Everyone made mistakes, and you erased them, rubbing at the paper until it went soft and grey and nearly wore through, blowing away the little crumbs of eraser. You chewed the end of the pencil, a habit your mother scolded you for, the wood dented with the marks of your teeth. It was tedious. It was often boring. There was no way around it but through it. And that was rather the whole point, though you would not have understood it then. When you got stuck, truly stuck, there was no glowing screen to hand you the answer in an instant. There was only the heavy encyclopedia on the living room shelf, its spine cracked and its pages soft, and you would haul down the right volume and hunt through it, and half the time you got lost along the way, snagged by some other entry entirely, reading about volcanoes when you had come for the capital of some faraway country. And half the time that wandering taught you more than the assignment ever would. Mostly, though, there was just you and the problem and your own patient effort. You had to think it through yourself, all the way to the end, with no shortcut and no rescue. And there was a real dignity in that, a quiet building of something, the slow strengthening of a mind learning to sit with a hard thing until it yielded. It did not feel noble at the time. It felt like drudgery. But it was teaching you how to work, how to struggle, how to stay with a problem past the point where you wanted to quit. And that lesson would outlast every fact you memorized. Around you, the house went about its evening. The radio murmured low from the counter, a song, a voice, the comforting undercurrent of sound. Your mother moved at the stove, and the smell of onions softening in a pan began to fill the room, warm and homely, and your stomach answered it. A younger sibling sprawled nearby with their own homework or the funny pages kicking their feet. Your father might be in the next room with the newspaper, the pages rustling. Everyone in their separate corner, everyone quietly busy, the whole family gathered loosely in the warm-lit rooms while the dark came down outside. There was a companionship in that, unspoken and easy. You were doing your homework alone, and yet you were not alone at all. You were held inside the gentle machinery of the household, surrounded by the sounds and smells of the people who loved you, going about their evening. You could look up from your math and catch your mother's eye and get a tired smile. You could ask your father a question about history, and he would set down his paper and tell you more than you asked. The work was solitary, but the doing of it was shared, folded into the ordinary evening life of the family. We have traded so much of that away without quite meaning to. Now the answers come instantly, and the struggle has been smoothed nearly out of existence. And everyone does their separate work behind their separate screens in their separate rooms. But there was something in the old slow way, something in the shared table, and the low radio, and the smell of dinner, and the hard problem you had to solve with nothing but your own stubborn mind. It bound the evening together. It bound the family together. It made the work a part of the home. At last the page is finished, the problem solved, the book closed, and you gather your papers and your chewed pencil and clear your books away to make room for the plates. Your mother is setting the table around you, and the onions have become something wonderful, and the whole kitchen is warm and bright against the dark windows. The homework is done, earned the hard way, all your own. It was only homework, tedious and slow. But on an ordinary evening in 1974, at the warm kitchen table with your family close around you, it was part of the quiet dignity of an ordinary and well-lived life. It is dinner time now, and everyone gathers around the table at once, the way they nearly always did. The plates are passed hand to hand, the meatloaf or the casserole or the roast steaming in the centre. Your father asks about your day. Your mother reminds someone to use their napkin. A younger sibling kicks you under the table. The television is off, in another room entirely, and the only entertainment is each other. There is the clink of forks, the low hum of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter over some small joke. Nobody is looking at a phone because there are no phones to look at. Just faces and food and the ordinary closeness of people who see each other every single day. It is the kind of togetherness we would give a great deal to have back. The call to dinner drew everyone in from the corners of the house, from the homework and the newspaper and the television and the yard, all of you converging on the kitchen at the same appointed hour. There was no negotiating it, no eating in shifts, no drifting off to your own room with a plate. When your mother said dinner was ready, the family gathered together at the same table at the same time, and that daily gathering was so ordinary and so unquestioned that no one thought to marvel at it. Only now, looking back, does it seem like something close to sacred. The food came to the centre of the table in its serving dishes, steaming, and then began that hand-to-hand journey around the family. The plates passed, the bowls handed along, everyone serving themselves and helping the little ones and reaching and asking and passing again. There might be a meatloaf, dense and glazed and comforting. There might be a casserole, that great workhorse of the era, or a roast surrounded by potatoes, or a chicken your mother had been tending all afternoon. Whatever it was made from scratch by hands you knew, and it tasted like home in a way no restaurant ever could. And then the talk, which was the real meal. Your father would ask about your day, and you would answer, and one thing would lead to another, and before long the whole table was going at once, everyone's day laid out and picked over and laughed about. Your mother would remind someone to sit up, to use their napkin, to chew with their mouth closed, her attention everywhere at once. A younger sibling would kick you under the table and you would kick back, and there would be a brief silent war conducted entirely below the tablecloth while the grown-ups talked on above. The television was off. That was simply how it was. It sat dark in the other room, and dinner belonged to the family, not to the screen, and the only entertainment on offer was each other, which turned out to be plenty. Someone would tell a story. Someone would say something unintentionally funny, and the whole table would erupt. That helpless family laughter that feeds on itself and will not stop, until someone nearly chokes, and someone else has to look away to recover. These were the jokes that became legend, repeated for years, the private comedy of a family that knew each other down to the bone. There was the ordinary music of it too, the clink of forks against plates, the scrape of a chair, the glug of milk being poured, the low, steady hum of voices weaving in and out. It was not a performance. Nobody was trying to be interesting. It was just the daily unremarkable business of a family sharing a meal, and its very ordinariness was the thing that made it precious, though none of you could have known it at the time. You thought there would always be dinners like this. You thought this table would always be full. Nobody was looking at a phone, because there were no phones to look at, and so nobody was anywhere but here. There was no glowing rectangle pulling anyone's eyes away, no buzzing in a pocket, no half of someone's attention drifting off to some other world. You looked at each other, you listened, or half listened, but you were there, your whole self at the table, present in a way that has become almost impossibly rare. The togetherness was total because nothing was allowed to compete with it. That is the thing we would give a great deal to have back if we could, that guaranteed daily hour when the whole family sat down together and simply was a family. Not a special occasion, not a holiday, just an ordinary Tuesday and an ordinary supper, and everyone you loved gathered in one warm, bright room, passing the potatoes, telling the same old jokes, kicking each other under the table. It was the quiet foundation the whole family was built on, laid down one supper at a time. At last the plates are empty and the talk winds down, and someone is excused to clear the table, and the ordinary evening flows on toward the dishes and the homework and the bedtime still ahead. But for that 1 hour, you were all together, faces lit by the overhead lamp, close and easy and whole. It was only dinner, plain food on a plain table. But on an ordinary evening in 1974, with your whole family gathered around and the television dark in the other room, it was the warmest and most ordinary kind of love there is. After the dishes are done, the whole family drifts into the living room and settles in front of the television, that big wooden box that felt like the heart of the home. There are only a few channels, and you have to get up and turn the dial to change them, and someone always has to fiddle with the antenna to chase away the fuzz. But at 8 o'clock your favourite show comes on, the same night every week, and you would not dream of missing it. You sink into the couch cushions with your family around you, everyone laughing at the same jokes at the same time. There is no pausing, no choosing, no endless scroll. Just the show, and this hour, and the quiet magic of watching it all together. The television set was a genuine piece of furniture, a great wooden cabinet that stood against the living room wall like a hearth, and in a way it was one. The warm, glowing heart the whole family gathered around when the day was done. It had a heft and a presence that our thin, flat screens have lost entirely. You did not carry it from room to room. It lived in one place, the living room, the shared room. And gathering to watch it meant gathering together in the same space, in the same hour, shoulder to shoulder on the couch. There were only a few channels, and that scarcity shaped everything. You could not summon anything you liked at any moment you pleased. You got what was broadcast, when it was broadcast, and that was that. And to change from one channel to another, you had to actually get up, cross the room, and turn the dial with a solid mechanical clunk, working your way around the limited little world of what was on. This job usually fell to whoever was youngest or most agreeable, the family channel changer, dispatched to the set on command and grumbling all the way. And then there was the antenna, that eternal household struggle. The picture would drift into a snowstorm of fuzz, or the sound would buzz and warp, and someone would have to get up and fiddle with the rabbit ears, adjusting them this way and that, sometimes holding them at a particular angle, sometimes draping a bit of foil over the end, occasionally standing frozen in some awkward posture because that, and only that, was the position that brought the picture in clear. The whole family would call out directions. A little to the left. No, back. There, hold it. Don't move. But it was all worth it, because at 8 o'clock on its appointed night your show came on. The same show, the same night, every single week, an appointment the whole family kept. You would not have dreamed of missing it, and neither would anyone else in the country who loved it, and there was a strange invisible fellowship in that, in knowing that all across the land, in a million living rooms, people were watching the very same thing at the very same moment, laughing at the very same jokes. You sank into the couch with your family close around you, everyone finding their usual spot, the cushions holding the shape of 1,000 evenings just like this one, and you watched together. When something was funny, you all laughed at once, the laughter feeding on itself, better for being shared. When something was sad or frightening or thrilling, you felt it together, a whole family moving as one through the story. There was a magic in that shared feeling, in the way a single show could gather everyone up and carry them along together for an hour. There was no pausing it. If you got up for a glass of water, you missed what happened, and no one was going to rewind it for you, because rewinding did not exist. There was no choosing from among 10,000 options, no endless scroll of things you might watch instead, no half-watching while your eyes wandered to some other screen in your lap. There was only the one show, on the one channel, in the 1 hour, demanding and receiving your whole attention. You watched it, all of it, together, because that was the only way there was to watch anything at all. And that limitation, which would seem unbearable now, was in truth a kind of gift, because everyone was watching the same thing. Everyone had something to talk about the next day, at school, at work, over the back fence. The show belonged to all of you, and because you could not summon it whenever you liked, its weekly arrival was an event, something looked forward to all week long, a small reliable joy that punctuated the calendar and gave the week a shape. At last the show ends, and the theme music plays you out, and the family stirs and stretches on the couch, reluctant to let the spell break. Someone gets up to turn the dial, or to shut the set off with a decisive click, the picture collapsing to a bright dot that lingers a moment in the dark before it fades. It was only television, a few channels and a fussy antenna, and a wooden box in the corner. But on an ordinary evening in 1974, gathered on the couch with your whole family laughing at the same jokes at the same time, it was one of the warmest hours the week had to give. Now you slip away to your bedroom, close the door, and lower the needle onto the record. There is that soft crackle and pop before the music begins, and then the whole room fills with sound. You lie back on your bed, staring at the ceiling, the album cover propped beside you so you can read every word on the sleeve. The posters on your walls watch over you, the bands you love frozen mid-song. You know every note, every breath, every silence between the tracks. This is your private world, built one album at a time, and there's nowhere else you would rather be. Music lived differently then, in physical grooves and gatefold covers, something you held and turned over and truly listened to, all the way through. Your bedroom was your kingdom, the one place in the whole busy house that was truly yours, and closing the door behind you was like closing the door on the entire world. Inside these four walls you answered to no one. You could be exactly whoever you were when nobody was watching, and the soundtrack to that private self was spinning right there on the turntable in the corner. The record player that was very likely your most prized possession in all the world. You slid the record from its sleeve with a care that bordered on reverence, holding it by the edges the way you had been taught, never touching the grooves. You set it on the platter and watched it begin to spin, and then you lowered the needle. That most delicate operation, guiding the tone arm down until it kissed the very edge of the record. And then that sound, that beloved sound, the soft crackle and pop of the needle finding the groove, a heartbeat of anticipation before the first note, and every music lover of the era would know it anywhere, would feel their chest tighten at it even now. Then the music bloomed and filled the room, and you fell back onto your bed and let it take you. You did not do anything else. That was the whole point. You were not music in the background of some other task. Listening was the task, the entire activity, and you gave it everything. You lay there and stared at the ceiling and let the sound wash over you and through you, following every instrument, waiting for the parts you loved, feeling the whole shape of the album unfold the way its makers had intended. Beside you, propped against your knees or lying open on the bed, was the album cover itself, and it was half the experience. You studied it the way a scholar studies a text. The artwork on the front, which you had already memorized but pored over anyway, the photographs of the band, and if you were lucky, if it was a gatefold, the whole thing opened up like a book to reveal more images, more words, the lyrics printed out so you could follow along and finally learn what they were really singing, the liner notes thanking people you would never meet. You read every word. All of it mattered. You knew these albums the way you knew the faces of your friends. Every note, every drum fill, every held breath before a chorus, every tiny imperfection, the click of a guitar pick, the singer's intake of air. And you knew the silences too, the exact length of the gap between one song and the next, so that in the quiet you were already hearing the opening of the track to come. You knew the album so completely because you listened to them so completely, over and over, start to finish, the way they were built to be heard. The posters on your walls watched over all of it. The bands you loved frozen forever mid-song, mid-leap, mid-scream, gazing down at you from their glossy heights. They were your icons, your saints, and this room was your private chapel, and the music pouring out of that turntable was your prayer. Here, with the door closed and the record spinning, you were entirely yourself, entirely free, in a world you had built one hard-saved album at a time. That is what has quietly slipped away in an age when all the music ever made floats weightless and instant in the air. Back then, music was a physical thing, a heavy black disc you held in your two hands, a cover you could read and touch and prop against your knees, an object you had wanted and saved for and chosen and carried home. And because it was physical, because it cost you something and took real effort to play, you honoured it with your full attention, all the way through, side one and then side two, never skipping, never shuffling, just listening. At last the final track fades and the needle lifts and drifts inward, and the record spins on in silence, and you lie there a moment longer in the afterglow before you rouse yourself to flip it or lift it gently back into its sleeve. The posters watch on. The room holds its quiet. It was only a record, only an hour alone in your bedroom with the door shut. But on an ordinary evening in 1974, lying back with the music filling the room and the album cover in your hands, it was the truest and most private happiness a young heart could know. Let us head out to the drive-in now, where the summer sky is going purple, and the great white screen stands waiting at the far end of the lot. You pile into somebody's car and roll slowly over the gravel to your spot and hook the crackling metal speaker onto the window. The smell of popcorn and warm dust and somebody's cigarette drifts in on the evening air. Kids in pyjamas play on the swings up front while the light fades, and then the screen flickers to life, enormous and bright against the darkening sky. You share a tub of popcorn, sink low in your seat, watch the movie under the actual stars. There was a romance to it, a looseness, a sense that the whole night belonged to you and your friends and nobody else. The drive-in was a summer sacrament, and getting there was half the joy. You piled into somebody's car, more of you than there really should have been, elbows and knees and laughter, and you rumbled out to the edge of town where the great screen stood tall against the fading sky like a blank white monument. You paid at the little booth and rolled slowly in over the gravel, tyres crunching, easing down the rows past the humps of dirt built to tilt each car up toward the screen, hunting for the perfect spot. Then came the ritual of the speaker, that heavy metal box on its cord hanging from a post beside each space. You rolled down the window and lifted it off its hook and hung it on the glass, and there was a crackle and a hum, and then the tinny sound came alive, and that was the sound of the drive-in, thin and imperfect and utterly beloved. The picture would be enormous and the sound would be small and scratchy, and somehow that mismatch was part of the whole strange magic of the thing. The light was still draining out of the sky when you arrived, and the lot filled slowly while you waited, and the waiting was its own pleasure. The smell of the place drifted in through the open windows, buttery popcorn from the concession stand, warm dust rising off the gravel, the sweet smoke of somebody's cigarette a few cars over. Down at the front, near the base of the screen, there was often a little playground, and the younger kids, already in their pyjamas because their parents knew they would never last the night, ran shrieking on the swings while the last of the daylight faded. And then, as the sky went from purple to deep blue to black, the screen would flicker and flare and come to life, impossibly huge, glowing bright against the darkness, and a cheer would go up across the lot, horns tapping, headlights flashing. The movie began, and the whole field of cars settled in to watch, and you sank low in your seat with the popcorn tub balanced between you, passing it back and forth, and let the story carry you away beneath the open sky. That was the thing no indoor theatre could ever match. The sky itself. The actual stars wheeling overhead beyond the top of the screen. The warm night air moving through the open windows. The sense of being outside and cosy all at once. You could tip your head back and see the real heavens above the flickering fictional one, and there was a wonder in that, a bigness that made the whole evening feel less like watching a movie and more like being folded into the summer night itself. And there was the looseness of it, the freedom no proper theatre allowed. You could talk, you could laugh out loud, you could slip out to the concession stand and back, or move from one car to another to visit friends, or simply not watch the movie at all and instead lie back and talk and watch the stars. Nobody shushed you. Nobody minded. The whole sprawling lot ran on its own easy rules, and for a few hours it belonged entirely to you and your friends, a little world of your own under the enormous sky. There was romance in it too, of course, in every sense of the word. The drive-in was famous for it, the dark and the privacy and the closeness, and many a first date and first kiss happened in the front seat of a car with a movie flickering unwatched in the distance. But even without any of that, even just a car full of friends sharing popcorn and cracking jokes, there was a sweetness to the night, a sense of stolen freedom, of being young and out late and answerable to no one. At last the movie ends, or the second feature runs so late that half the lot has drifted off to sleep, and the credits roll and the headlights begin to flick on one by one across the field. You unhook the speaker and hang it back on its post, and you roll slowly out over the gravel in a long, patient line of tail lights, the warm night still pouring through the windows. It was only a movie, watched on a scratchy speaker in the front seat of a crowded car. But on a summer night in 1974, beneath the actual stars with your friends all around you, The whole enormous night felt like it belonged to no one else in the world. It is Friday night now, and the main street through town has come alive. Cars roll slowly up and down the strip, windows down, radios turned up, engines rumbling low and proud. You're packed in with your friends, elbows out the windows, calling out to the cars you recognise, all of you doing endless loops for the simple joy of being seen and being young. The streetlights come on one by one. The air smells of gasoline and warm night and someone's French fries. There is nowhere in particular to go, and that is entirely the point. Cruising was its own destination, a slow-motion parade of teenage freedom, and for a few golden hours the whole town felt like it belonged to the young. Friday night belonged to the Strip, that stretch of main road through the middle of town, and as the sun went down and the workday world emptied out, the young took it over. The cars came out polished and gleaming, and fell into the slow river of traffic that flowed up one end and down the other, up and down, around and around for hours. There was nowhere you were trying to get to. The driving was the destination. The whole point was simply to be out there in the flow, part of the great rolling parade. The car was everything on a night like this. Your ticket to freedom, your rolling living room, and whether it was yours or a friend's or somebody's borrowed from a big brother, you packed into it as many as it would hold. Windows down, arms hanging out into the warm night. Radio turned up as loud as it would go. The same songs pouring out of every car so that the whole strip seemed to share one enormous soundtrack. Engines rumbled low and proud, and here and there someone gunned it at a light just to hear it roar, and everyone turned to look. And looking was the whole game. You cruised to see and be seen, to check out who was out tonight, who was with whom, whose car was new, who was looking good. You called out to the cars you recognised as they rolled past the other way, a shout, a wave, a joke tossed across the lanes, and messages passed up and down the strip this way, car to car, all night long. You might pull alongside friends at a light and talk through the open windows until it turned green, then peel apart with a wave, only to loop around and find each other again 10 minutes later. The streetlights came on one by one as the dark settled, throwing their pools of amber down onto the slow-moving cars, and the neon signs of the strip flickered to life. The diner, the gas station, the burger stand, all of it glowing in the deepening blue. The air that poured through the windows was thick with the smells of the night, gasoline and exhaust, warm asphalt giving up the day's heat, and somewhere the sharp, delicious smell of French fries from a drive-in, riding the breeze. There was nowhere to go and nothing to accomplish, and that was precisely the beauty of it. Though a grown-up watching might have shaken his head at all that gas burned on all those pointless loops. But it was not pointless, not to you. It was the very shape of freedom at that age, the car and the road and the night and your friends, the whole town laid out before you, and the whole evening yours to fill with nothing but motion and music and each other's company. For a few golden hours the strip belonged to the young, and everyone knew it. The grown-ups were home, the stores were closing, and out here under the streetlights the teenagers ruled, cruising their slow, endless circuits, a moving festival of youth that reassembled itself every Friday night as if by some ancient agreement. You were part of something larger than your own carful of friends, part of the whole rolling community of everyone your age, all of you out together, all of you alive at the same bright moment. It is nearly impossible to explain now, the appeal of simply driving in circles for hours with no destination at all. But you have to remember what the car meant then, and what a small town offered a restless teenager on a Friday night, and how much of the joy was just in being out, being mobile, being free of the house and the parents and the rules, cruising through the warm dark with the radio up and your whole young life stretching out ahead of you like the lit road itself. At last, the traffic thins as the night wears on, the cars peeling off one by one toward home, the strip slowly emptying until only a few stragglers remain, making their final loops. You head home too, eventually, window still down, the radio playing something soft now, the night air cool at last against your face. It was only driving, only endless loops down an ordinary main street. But on a Friday night in 1974, packed in with your friends beneath the glowing streetlights, cruising was the pure and simple joy of being young in a town that, for those few hours, belonged entirely to you. Now you spill out of the car and into the diner, or up to the window of the burger stand, hungry and loud and full of the night. The place is bright and warm, the griddle sizzling, the smell of frying onions and hot grease so thick you could lean on it. A waitress in a paper hat calls everyone honey and never writes down the orders. You crowd into a vinyl booth, the seats squeaking under you, and someone drops a coin in the tabletop jukebox to pick a song. Burgers and fries and thick milkshakes arrive, and you share fries off each other's plates without asking. The talk runs late and easy. It was cheap and greasy and absolutely perfect, the natural gathering place for a whole generation on a Friday night. The diner was a beacon on the dark strip, its windows blazing with warm light, its neon sign humming and buzzing against the night sky, and pulling up to it after hours of cruising felt like coming home. You tumbled out of the car in a noisy tangle, still riding the high of the evening, and pushed through the door into the bright warm bustle inside, and the whole place wrapped around you at once. The heat, the light, the sound, the smell. Oh, that smell! It hit you the moment the door swung open, the rich heavy perfume of the griddle, onions frying golden, burgers sizzling and popping, grease and coffee and something sweet all layered together into an aroma so thick and so good you felt you could have eaten the very air. It was not a healthy smell, not by any measure, and that was exactly why it was so wonderful. It promised everything a hungry teenager could want, and it delivered every time. The waitress had seen 1,000 nights just like this one, and she took your crowd in stride, unflappable, a pencil tucked behind her ear that she never seemed to use. She called every last one of you honey and dear and hon, and she carried 6 plates up one arm, and she remembered your order without ever writing it down, and she had a way of teasing the boys that turned them red and pleased them enormously. She was the queen of the place, and the place ran on her, and you loved her the way you love someone who feeds you when you're young and always glad to see you. You crowded into a booth built for 4 and put 6 in it anyway, sliding across the cool vinyl seats that squeaked and sighed under you, more of you spilling onto the ends of the benches. And there on the table, if you were lucky, sat the little jukebox, that gleaming chrome box with the pages of songs you could flip through, and somebody always had a coin, and there was a debate about what to play, and then the selection dropped and the music started up right there at your own table, chosen by your own hand. The food came fast and hot and cheap, which was everything you needed it to be. Burgers wrapped in paper or piled on plates, fries heaped and golden and glistening with salt, and milkshakes so thick the straw stood up straight in them, so thick you had to work at them until your cheeks ached. You poured on the ketchup and reached across each other and without a word, without so much as asking, plucked fries off each other's plates, because that was simply understood. That was the unspoken law of the booth. What was one person's freeze was everyone's. And the talk was the real feast. You'd been out all night, cruising, seeing everyone, and now you gathered it all up and poured over it together in the warm, bright booth. Who had been out? Who had said what had happened and what it meant? You laughed until you could not breathe. You argued about nothing. You told the same stories you always told, and they were funny every time. And when a lull came, you just sat there, easy and full and happy, in no hurry to go anywhere, because there was nowhere better to be. That was the thing about the diner, the thing we have so quietly lost. It was a place that welcomed you, a whole booth of loud, broke teenagers nursing a plate of fries for 2 hours, and nobody rushed you out. Nobody minded. The waitress just kept the coffee coming and let you be. It was cheap enough that you could afford it on your little bit of job money, and open late enough to catch you after everything else had closed, and it asked nothing of you but that you show up and be young and hungry, which you were, gloriously every Friday night. It was the natural gathering place for a whole generation, the last stop, the after-party for the whole town's youth, the warm-lit room where the night finally came to rest. You could count on finding your people there, and on being found, on the booths filling up one by one as the cruising wound down and everyone drifted in from the dark strip toward the light, and the food, and the company. At last the hour grows truly late, and the crowd begins to thin, and the waitress starts wiping down the counter with a look that says gently, that it is time. You gather up your things and pull your crumpled bills to pay the small check and leave her whatever change you can spare, and you spill back out into the cool night, full and tired and laughing still. It was only a diner, only burgers and fries in a squeaky vinyl booth. But on a Friday night in 1974, bright and warm and greasy and perfect, it was the beating heart of being young, the place the whole long, wonderful evening had been leading to all along. And so, we come to the end of our long, unhurried day together. We walked it from the very first song on the clock radio all the way down into the quiet of the lamplit dark, and we did not miss much along the way. The crowded hallways and the folded notes, the greasy diner and the glowing arcade, the record held in both hands like something precious. The whole family gathered around one table, one show, one ordinary evening. It was nothing remarkable, really. It was just a Tuesday, and that somehow was the whole beauty of it. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets, think about the people who actually lived these days. The ones who woke up in those kitchens and poured the cereal and reminded someone about their lunch money. The ones who mowed the lawns and folded the papers and drove the long, slow loops down the strip on a Friday night. They did not think of themselves as living in a golden age. They were just living, moment by ordinary moment, caring for one another in all the small unspoken ways that hold a life and a family and a whole community together. And maybe that is the thing worth carrying forward. Not the era itself, which is gone, but its pace, its attention, the way it let a moment simply be a moment. So tomorrow perhaps you might slow down just a little. Notice one ordinary thing. Let a song finish before you rise. Because history is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a screen door and a radio and someone down the street who knows your name, and that is enough. That has always been enough. Rest now. The day is done, and you're safe and warm and here. Good night.